In this video, we're going to take a look at two different ways of launching parallel coding tasks using Claude Code using the subagent capabilities. Subagents are individual copies of Claude Code with specific functionalities and instructions. They are defined under the .claude folder, under the agents folder, by these markdown files that show specific instructions as to when to use them, as well as things like some tools, colors, and different things that will identify them. So for example, here we have a full stack developer sub-agent that can read files, write files, edit multiple files, execute bash commands, run Docker commands, database, context 7 for documentation, etc. Then it has a particular prompt. You're a senior full stack developer specializing in complete feature development. These agents come from this wonderful repo that has, across 10 categories, 100 sub-agent definitions, including data scientists, for example, database optimizer, LLM architect, machine learning engineer. And the way you bring these into your project is basically by copying these files of the agents that you are interested in into the .claude/agents folder. The particular workflow that I like to follow for parallel execution of various tasks at the same time, it revolves around creating GitHub issues for each of the tasks, then creating work trees and branches, and then firing off the agents to work on each of those work trees independently. For the first method of running this, which is going to be like a fully automated method where Claude just invokes the sub-agents and they, in your own same terminal session, fire off many parallel execution jobs, we want to launch Claude. This is a kind of a less hands-on approach, and you have to be very careful because we're going to give it all the permissions. We're not going to be checking on the progress of the sub-agents. In the second approach, we will be manually checking on the sub-agents, and that I'll show a little bit later. For the first one, we want to launch Claude with this flag, Claude dangerously skip permissions, and we want to make sure always to be working on source control so that these things only affect branches, right? We don't want to make any changes that we won't be able to roll back. Here, I just want to fetch a previous conversation where I did much of the prompting for this tasks. So I'm going to call the resume command. In this conversation, I started to develop the instructions for the execution. We want to work across three different categories, like we're basically going to give a task to our mobile app developer, to a security auditor, and then I think a Kotlin specialist. But we want to develop the instructions first, and we're going to do that as GitHub issues. Here is a example of how to use a subagent in a direct instruction. We're going to see that, okay, so the instruction is identify the subagent most appropriate for the following task. We want to identify whether the behavior that is triggered by the app's debug menu for SMS notifications testing is the same as for the actual behavior of the app when a real text message is received and a transaction is identified. Delegate this to the appropriate subagent. So it's a task of just information retrieval, basically. And then it's going to analyze it, and it chose the mobile app developer. It gave the task to it. It used 20 tool calls, 75,000 tokens, and almost 3 minutes of execution, and it gives back the response. So a nice consequence of using a subagent here is that all of these tokens, 75,000 tokens, are not part of the context window of our main Claude Code session. So that really helps to keep things clean. So now that it found the whole diagnosis of the issue, we are asking now, create a task description following. We want to make the behavior more consistent by ensuring that the testing behaves the same way in both cases. I then tell it to just create a GitHub issue for this implementation. And this is a very nice way of organizing our work. So here is the main, the description. Here's the MCP tool call, and it's going to create a description for solving that task. Perfect. Created GitHub issue number 6 to illustrate the parallel execution capabilities. Now I'm creating a code optimization task, like figure out who is the best sub-agent for code optimization. And it thinks the Kotlin specialist is the best sub-agent for the code optimization. Here, after reading some of the descriptions in there, and then it creates a GitHub issue for that. And then similarly for comprehensive security audit. So that's the way we created the main instructions, okay? So after we create the GitHub issues, they will appear here in our repository as very nice instructions to track of our main implementations. And the main thing that we want to take out of this video is basically this prompt. Once we have those instructions, the way we're going to fire off the 3 parallel Claude Code session is we're going to tell it the following. When we want to implement issues 6, 7, and 8 in parallel by identifying which of our available subagents is the most appropriate for each of the tasks defined in the GitHub issues. We want to have each agent work on a separate independent work tree. This is important for each task. So let's make sure to create the work trees and associated branches for each of these tasks, and make sure that each agent checks out the appropriate branch before it starts to work. Create the folders for the work trees at the same level as our roots in the project with appropriate names for each of the tasks. Okay, perfect. So it starts to analyze and create separate work trees and branches. Let me first check the current Git status, and then it starts to create the folders. Okay, it's the most important thing. You have to have separate folders. So this is going to be where basically branches of your repo are going to live, but they're going to be physically on your machine, so that Claude can fire off the parallel executions over there. Now let me create the branches, and now it's creating the work trees by pointing the folders to the branch that it is creating. Okay, it is going to launch the sub-agents in the parallel work with their respective issues. Each agent will work on their dedicated work tree. So these are the parallel versions of Claude Code that are going to get to work on each of those issues. Now, when I launched this the first time, I didn't give it all the permissions, and it was getting stuck because it was requiring confirmation, but I could not give confirmation because it is the sub-agent asking for the confirmation. I still don't know exactly how to do that, except to give it all the permissions ahead of time, which if you're just experimenting and these branches are separate, right? I mean, you're working on branches, then it's probably okay to do that as long as you don't mess up your main repository, right? So that's basically the way to launch these processes in parallel. The other way that I think is also pretty interesting is to not tell it to implement these changes or launch the subagents, but just to create the work trees and the branches, and then opening them up by going here. And then let's say you're gonna open up the performance optimization, and you would open this in a new window, and then launch Claude Code in here, right? You could launch, and then here you can launch it without the dangerous permissions. You could say that. We could read our GitHub issue and launch it from here. That way you could have very direct control of what each of the subagents are working, but you could have the 3 of them working at the same time. So let's take a look at what open GitHub issues do we have. So here we're seeing that already this branch has had some work on it, which was done with the fully automated process that we described. But I just want to ask it, examine the issue related to this branch. Now it's starting to read through the repository, what files it thinks are most important for this performance optimization. And while that is taking place, we can actually start working on another of the issues of the work trees. I'm sorry. So you could check out the work trees here. This is the performance optimization. Now we could launch this one in another window. And again, launch Claude Code here, and then continue the implementation. But you get the idea. You can work on these manually in parallel, or you could have the session just delegate the tasks directly, but then you can have a little bit less control that way, and it's a little bit more automated. But if you're careful creating the branches, then that may be okay.